So the situation is that The Witcher 3 got a next-gen update in the middle of December last year. You probably know that. Now, on consoles, it was okay. The performance mode was pretty good, I thought, especially if you had a VRR television, which most people don't, I'm guessing. The ray tracing mode was abysmally choppy, basically unplayable. But performance mode was basically fine, and performance mode is what you're going to use on consoles, right? So that wasn't too bad. On PC, there was a feeling that CD Projekt Red had taken something that worked perfectly well and ran beautifully and broke it. You know, before this update, The Witcher 3 was getting on a bit, but it was still quite a beautiful game that you could run at Ultra on a fairly modest PC. And so you had one of the best RPGs of all time. It looked beautiful and it ran incredibly smoothly on hardware that didn't cost the earth. The Witcher 3's shelf life as a system melter had basically come to an end. The clock had run down and the base level spec hardware of your average user had caught up with the game in terms of technology. And that's fine. There's actually something really thrilling I find about having a high-end PC and running a game that used to be quite high-end and isn't now, and just whacking everything at the highest settings and watching as the new rig just crunches through it, no bother, without breaking a sweat. Assassin's Creed Unity is one of those now, and it's absolutely lovely. The Witcher 3, until the middle of December last year, was one of those. Now the situation is a bit more complicated, so it's been updated with a load of new graphical bells and whistles, new texturing. I think some little bits of geometry have been improved here and there. The foliage is a little more dense, the lighting has been tweaked. You can now vastly increase the number of NPCs and background characters that are walking around in the game world. But the big thing is ray tracing. So PCs are the only platform where, of course, you're going to have any hope of having ray tracing turned on and decent performance. For my money, if you don't have ray tracing turned on PC, you might as well play the Xbox Series X or PS5 versions. Keeping them on performance mode, they look and play absolutely fine. On PC, if you've got a 3000 series GPU or higher, you're going to want ray tracing turned on, basically, right? You're going to want ray tracing. The whole point of having a high-end gaming PC is speed and power. Having the speed and power to apply to things like ray tracing. High-end features that make the consoles wave a little white flag and melt into a puddle of liquid convenience. Except the first next-gen update was so bad on PC that people found it performed quite abysmally whether you had ray tracing turned on or off. Essentially, with ray tracing, the performance was horrid, and without ray tracing, the performance was noticeably worse than the previous version, but for negligible gains in terms of image quality. So PC players were understandably a bit miffed, to the point where quite a lot of them actually rolled back their version of the game to get rid of the next-gen patch altogether. Not a great start for CD Projekt Red's grand vision of overhauling the game and future-proofing it for the next 10 years or whatever. As an aside, when does that cycle end? Because CD Projekt Red already future-proofed the original version of The Witcher 3 to look and run beautifully on PCs 10 years ahead, which is now, kind of, almost now, like, well, 2 years from now, but basically now. I mean, look, I like ray tracing as much as the next person, but it seems a wee bit cruel to change the goalposts just when the median spec becomes capable of running the game on ultra settings to then issue a patch that says, actually, no, fuck you, it's going to be another 10 years. It's just a bit weird for a game to be in development hell when it's already out, you know? Actually, I guess that's not so weird, that's just how games are these days. Oh my god, this hobby's terrible. But look, long story short, I'm happy to report that patch 4.02 is pretty good. It's pretty good performance-wise. It's not amazing, right? I'm not going to pretend that it's got you back to a point where you can now whack everything on Ultra again and your rig can smash it again and now there's ray tracing. Obviously, that's not the case. But the ray tracing mode now has a performance mode, which really does give the system a lot more headroom. It's now much easier to reach that sweet spot between performance and visual fidelity with ray tracing activated. So if you've got a 2000 or 3000 series card and you found the next-gen patch basically ruined the game for you, maybe try upgrading now, see if it works for you. I'm running this on a Ryzen 9 with a 3080 Ti, so it's not bleeding edge, but it's pretty good. And I also have a FreeSync monitor, which for me, the end user, is smoothing out a lot of the frame rate dips, they're going to be frequent. Unfortunately, for some reason, and this is across PC and consoles, this version of The Witcher just has a real problem with frame rate consistency above all else. So the long and short of it is, if you have decent hardware and a variable refresh rate monitor, The Witcher 3 on PC, the next gen update, now runs okay. You can get it looking nice and performing, perfectly playably with ray tracing turned on. Now, I'm not entirely convinced that all the faff is worth it ultimately. I honestly think that when you're in the guts of it, when you're in the minute-to-minute playing of the game, you'd have to have the high-end PC version and the console version running side by side to really properly appreciate the differences between them. But considering that you're obviously not going to do that because you're not demented, I would say that any current version of this game is just as good and just as enjoyable as any other. You're not missing anything by not playing the high-end PC version with RTX on if, for example, you're playing the Series S version in performance mode, unless you're really looking out for reflections that don't quite behave like real reflections do, or unless you're staring at every individual cobblestone. You're still getting a premium experience, and it's 99% the same. It's like the difference between a chimpanzee and a person. No, wait, that's a really bad... I forget I said that. But the thing I find most surprising of all is that I would extend this to the way that the Xbox One X version ran on Series X before the next gen update. See, the performance mode that was designed for Xbox One X had dynamic resolution up to 4K and an unlocked frame rate. And I've gone on about this before, but that meant when you ran that version on the Series X hardware that came out a few years later, it ran at max resolution and ran at a steady 60 frames a second, and it looked incredible. You could nitpick about the anti-aliasing not being as good as the quality mode, or the draw distance details not being as good as the quality mode or whatever, but it looked pretty good. And honestly, not a kick in the arse away from how the current gen performance mode runs on PS5 and Series X in the next gen patch. Does anyone outside of this hobby understand any of these words? Because it sounds like gibberish in my head. I mean, that's because it is gibberish, isn't it? It doesn't matter whether you understand it or not. But the point is that Witcher 3 was in a good place, and then they sort of broke it a little bit, and now it's in a good place again. It runs okay, it looks nice on consoles now, it runs smoothly in performance mode on consoles, and you can get it looking really nice on PC on not quite bleeding edge hardware, and they've reset the clock, so it's probably going to take another 5 to 10 years before your kind of mid-spec PC can whack everything on Ultra on this. But who cares? You've already played it. You fucking played it 10 years ago. This is the most pointless series of updates that have ever happened. You've already played it. You've already played it. The next gen update comes out and you put it on for 5 minutes and go, aye, that looks a bit better, and then you turn it off again. And that's what all this time and effort is all about, innit? Hundreds of devs working away on updating the textures and putting the ray tracing in and testing it and doing all that, and then not that they did that much testing clearly, but that's what the effort all boils down to, innit? Just people putting it on for a bit and going, aye, that does look better, aye, it does look better, well done. What a lot of shite.